Great Britain relies on small modular reactors for nuclear energy for the future, and investments are also being made in new fuels, and that in order to force Russia out of the market. Britain's nuclear power plants are old and most are scheduled to be shut down by 2028. Nevertheless, people in London see no reason to forego nuclear energy. On the contrary, small modular reactors should go into operation in about 10 years. After the experience with a cost explosion at the Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant, modular reactors are the great hope. They could be made in factories, as British officials told Bloomberg, for example, and with them, power plants could be built faster and even cheaper. Great Britain is actively preparing to operate the new reactors. The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero has announced it will invest £300 million in the production of specialist fuels. This is the nuclear fuel high-assay low-enriched uranium, or HALEU, which is required for most modern reactors. Less than 1% of natural uranium is made up of U-235. That's the uranium isotope that can trigger a nuclear chain reaction. And today's reactors use low-enriched uranium, the so-called LEU, which contains about 5% of U-235. HALEU is enriched to a concentration of nearly 20%, which is still considered low enriched compared to the over 90% required for weapons-grade uranium. And the higher concentration of U-235 enables higher power densities in the cores of modern reactor designs. And this is expected to produce more efficient reactors with smaller cores, longer core life, and less fuel waste. And with the HALEU program, the government in London is pursuing another goal. It wants to deal another blow to the Russian economy. At present, nuclear fuel is only produced commercially in Russia. Energy Security Minister Claire Coutinho said Britain would then be able to supply HALEU to the rest of the world, and this could contribute to Russia's further isolation. We stood up to Putin on oil and gas and financial markets, and we will not allow him to blackmail us on nuclear fuel, she said. The ministry's goal is to displace Russia from the nuclear fuel market, according to Bloomberg. However, Great Britain will then have to share the market with the United States. The company Centrus Energy started producing HALEU there at the end of 2023, and the company wanted to produce around 20 kilograms of the nuclear fuel by the end of 23. And by the end of 24, it should be 900 kilograms. And until now, the USA needed around 2,000 tons of nuclear fuel per year. With HALEU, it should be less. But oil is also still an issue, especially for Britain. Oil from new licenses granted to North Sea producers and sent to UK refineries would account for less than 1% of the fuels used there in 2030, as an analysis has found now. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit said new projects like Rosebank would therefore make little difference to the UK's energy independence and security, and that's one of the government's key arguments for supporting further production. It has also said North Sea oil and gas would reduce the UK's reliance on imports and therefore reduce the emissions involved in shipping. In answer to a written parliamentary question, the government accepted that around 80% of the oil produced in the UK is refined overseas into products that then are shipped back over. And it also said it is not desirable to force private companies to allocate oil and gas produced in the North Sea for domestic use, appearing to admit that much of the oil produced by Rosebank and other projects would be sold abroad. The government is also trying to pass legislation due in the Commons I think today, that would require the North Sea regulator to invite applications for new oil and gas licenses on an annual basis instead of the 5-year average currently in place. Critics have accused the government of backing new production as a way to create a dividing line with Labour as a general election approaches. And Professor Gavin Bridge, fellow of the Durham Energy Institute at Durham University, said, "The reality is very little of the oil pumped from the North Sea is refined and sold on British soil, and even then the price is largely dictated by international markets. The notion that more drilling on the continental shelf boosts our energy security doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Most of the oil is extracted by private or foreign state-owned companies over which the government has little control." For their analysis, the ECIU looked at oil from UK fields produced in UK refineries and at products made in those refineries like diesel, petrol and aviation fuel. They found that very little oil used in the UK is produced and refined there, just 13% in 2022. As the amount of available fuel in the North Sea declines and demand falls, this will reduce to 1% by 2030. And Dr. Simon Gran-McGreens, the head of the analysis at ECIU, said, "New licenses are a distraction from policies that would have a real lasting impact on the UK's energy independence. Oil from new fields such as Rosebank will be traded internationally, as the government has admitted. This oil is not earmarked for the UK, and it won't make any real difference to UK prices." A Department for Energy Security and Net Zero spokesperson said about this, "With energy markets becoming more unstable, it makes sense to make the most of our own homegrown advantages in the North Sea. That's why we are backing the UK's oil and gas industry with annual licenses, supporting 200,000 jobs and giving them certainty to invest in jobs here and unlock billions in tax for our own transition to clean energy. As a net importer of oil and gas, the UK increasingly produces less oil and gas than it uses. These new licenses will not make us a net exporter or increase carbon emissions above our legally binding carbon budgets," they said. But at least let's not forget about renewable energies. The German energy supplier RWE is starting the new year 2024 in Scotland with great momentum. The company will begin construction of its third Scottish onshore wind farm in 12 months, as RWE announced. Scotland is at the heart of efforts by RWE, that's the UK's leading power producer, to expand an onshore wind portfolio. The three major new ones under construction will inject around £25 million into Scottish Council coffers based on the projects operating for 30 years. The 63-megawatt Strathywood wind project in Caithness in Scotland will be the final project to begin full construction. Pre-construction work is already underway and full construction will begin this year in 2024, according to RWE. The start of work follows the company's commitment on Capital Markets Day to continue the pace of its ambitions and investments in the UK. Between 2024 and 2030, RWE wants to invest €8 billion in new infrastructure for clean energy, including in Scotland. Construction is already underway on the Enoch Hill onshore wind project in East Ayrshire in Scotland. RWE expects the wind farm to be operational by 2025 and then generate enough electricity for around 67,000 typical British households. With 69 megawatts and 15 Nordex turbines, Enoch Hill will be the RWE's largest onshore wind farm in Scotland. Campster 2, a 10-turbine site, is also under construction in Caithness and is adjacent to Campster, the RWE's existing onshore wind farm. The current construction project is scheduled to be completed in 2025 and, once fully operational, will be able to generate electricity with an output of up to 36 megawatts. RWE has a portfolio of 33 onshore wind farms with a total installed capacity of 802 megawatts in operation, with a further 168 megawatts under construction in Scotland. And in addition, the company has a strong development pipeline for onshore wind turbines. This includes 22 projects across Scotland and Wales, 16 of which are located in Scotland, and RWE states the total output as 1.2 gigawatts. So there is still cooperation when there is enough money to make, as you can see after Brexit. And if you want to know more about Brexit or UK politics, the next video is right here on the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.